Welcome to Real Genius. I'm Chris Vognar, culture critic for the Dallas Morning News.
And I am Robert Wilonsky, digital managing editor for the Dallas Morning News.
Robert, we've had a lot of really interesting takes on the crime procedural of late. I mean, the podcast Serial, for one, True Detective on HBO, and now we have...
The Jinx?
The Jinx.
I mean, let's not forget the Jinx. The fact is, we probably should have done this whole episode about the Jinx.
That's another story. I would have had to have watched all of them by now. But we're talking about American Crime this week, which is on ABC on Thursday nights. It is a network crime procedural that I think is unlike any other network crime procedural. It's taking a sort of a sociological / racial look at how one crime spreads out and affects all of these different people. As I was sitting there watching the first 4 episodes, which I know you've seen as well, at some point it occurred to me, this is kind of like Crash, except it's really good.
Yeah, it's funny. I kept thinking about the fact that we're watching a version of Crash without... I kept thinking, is this a really good version of Crash, or is this just a less pretentious version of Crash? And I'm not quite sure it's not a little more crashy than I would like it to be. I think by the middle of the third, certainly into the 4th episode, I started to wonder if it wasn't just a lot of proselytizing masquerading as procedural. And I got a little sort of bored by, troubled by... It's by John Ridley, we should say.
He won an Oscar for writing
12 Years a
Slave.
Wrote the original screenplay for Three Kings, which David O. Russell and others took and molded into something else.
Made the very odd Jimi Hendrix biopic last year.
Which is not very good.
Which is not very good.
He's real hit and miss. I mean, I think he's a really smart, really talented, really just a sharp, one of the sharpest cultural thinkers that we have when it comes to the American arts. But I think there is something about American Crime. So we should sort of talk a little bit about what it is, first of all, which is there's a murder. It begins with Timothy Hutton getting a phone call that his son and his son's wife have been murdered. He goes and identifies, and this is basically 11 episodes about a single crime and the impact that crime has on the family of the victims and the family of those who may not have committed the crime, because we don't know kind of how this crime is unfolded and who ultimately is responsible, although throughout the first few episodes there are 3 suspects, an accomplice perhaps, and a woman who is a white woman who is dating a black junkie and other things. It certainly factors into, there's a lot of stuff about in which, for instance, a straight-laced Hispanic father, Mexican-American, he proudly identifies himself as, keeps referring to the fact that his son is involved with illegals, those people. So certainly it's not black and white, as it were. It's not cut and dried, as it were. There are a number of political and personal beliefs that come into play here, to the point where Felicity Huffman is the mother of one of the victims, keeps insisting that she wants his murder labeled a hate crime.
Just one of Felicity Huffman playing one of the most unappealing and yet hard to not watch heroines, anti-heroine in recent TV. She's just so brittly horrible and damaged, and I think it's one of many really good performances.
Well, they're all damaged
in American Crime. Yeah,
that's the thing about it, and that's the thing that's I guess the thing I found really compelling about it. It's that no show has done as good a job in recent memory as showing how your life can be altered dramatically, drastically, tragically in a split second. How a son who thinks he is not doing anything wrong and who may not have done anything wrong can suddenly find himself behind bars, where a father can do nothing to save him. I mean, my heart breaks for the father who watches his son, and all I could think about the whole time was, how do I make sure that my kid doesn't end up in that situation, even accidentally, which may have been the situation here? So it certainly resonates on a number of different levels. And I don't want to take anything away from the power of American Crime. But I do feel like there are moments during which it is taken a bit off the rails by its tendency to jump on a soapbox and wag its finger at the viewer.
Let's take a look at the trailer, and then I will offer my rebuttal. This is a very, very peppy, quickly cut trailer for American Crime.
I'm not saying nothing to annoy you for real.
You don't get to put this on me. This case is officially being categorized as a hate crime.
Do you willfully bend truth to fit your perspective? Did you abuse yourself with drugs?
You shall not purchase, possess, sell.
What's going to happen is going to happen.
I'm not leaving again.
It's for my own protection.
Now is not the time.
No, this is the time.
You participated in evaluations previously.
Why they gotta shoot me?
I'm trying to find out who killed our son.
You need to be the voice for people who do not have a voice.
You hate yourself and you hate us for looking like you.
The main thing I find impressive about this show is that I agree it is pressing hot buttons, and it knows it's pressing hot buttons. It's dealing with a lot of societal concerns, but I think it's doing it all, so far anyway, in the framework of a really well-told story. And for me, that makes all the difference. It's bringing up issues of racial conflict and generational conflict. It wants you to think about these things. And I guess every now and then it will get a little heavy-handed, but I think the narrative is so strong so far. Again, it's 4 episodes in that we've seen. I don't.
A third of it.
Exactly. I don't feel like, I have not yet felt like I am being preached to, and that's how I felt. Like, we get back to Crash. That's how I felt throughout Crash. So far in this, I feel like I'm watching a very involving story that has a lot on its mind, and I'm cool with that. I also like the working class milieu. This is Modesto, California. It's kind of a gritty Northern California city, not too far away from the San Francisco Bay Area. These are kinds of people, kinds of characters we don't see much of. We see more now than we used to, but we still don't see a whole lot of on network television.
Right. Look, I get what you're saying. I mean, I keep wondering, when I watch something like this, I keep asking myself, are these the kind of conversations people would have behind closed doors if this thing had actually happened to them? And I think that may be what sort of profoundly affects me more than anything. Much of my day is spent, or some of my days are spent, writing about crimes.
And weather and music.
Well, but crime,
sports.
Certainly a body that is found,
Yes.
a person who is discovered, someone who is shot and left for dead on a sidewalk somewhere in Oak Cliff, somewhere in North Dallas. I mean, anywhere it may be at any time, over anything. And it is this story that we tend to write about and move away from, and are reminded about only when we get emails from victims' family members or friends who want to know whatever became of this. And suddenly you're jolted back into going back and looking up, I forgot that name. Oh, well, guys, that was horrible. This is the story that we don't write about. And there are, in fact, a couple of places where media members show up. Intrusive, like Locusts and The Right Stuff.
That's us.
And you hate those journalists and what they do and the way they do it. And you keep thinking, are those the villains of this piece? And everyone will watch this through a different prism. And I think that's what makes it ultimately important television, good television, and riveting television. So, yeah, I think maybe it's worth being preached at a little bit. I just wish it were, I don't know, I'm not sure I wish it were anything, because what it is what it is intending to be. So it's powerful, it's provocative, it can be a bit, proselytizing, it can be a bit annoying, but, one thing it's certainly not as funny.
I think it's pretty it's pretty grim.
It's the grimmest TV show on network television.
It's pretty grim. I also like that it is a pretty multi-dimensional look at race, and it's not just, this we think this black guy might have done that, or the white police officer. You mentioned the Mexican-American father whose son basically thinks he's an Uncle Tom.
The daughter certainly does.
And his daughter thinks he's an Uncle Tom. And, we're talking about issues of Chicano identity, things like that. And then you have this junkie who you mentioned, whose sister is in the Nation of Islam.
Oh my God, her speech in the 4th episode.
And she's like, why are you dating this white woman?
Right.
There's all these different threads that, for me anyway, are starting to tie into some really fascinating stuff.
And meanwhile, the black and white couple, the junkies, are enamored of these modeling ads in which it's a black man and a white woman. They collect them.
Yeah, they tear out these glossy magazine ads as,
Right.
The prepackaged ideal of American life, what they're. And I think that's
Of the
actually
glamorous mixed race American
and I
life.
think that's a kind of a haunting touch too, looking to these media images as
Right.
something to aspire to. So I'm going to keep watching it.
Yeah.
As we've discussed before, and I'm realizing now that my aversion to a lot of network television is becoming dated, and that network TV is starting to learn its lessons from cable. And this was, I think, the series where I was sitting there going, this could be on FX. And
It could have been on HBO.
And it could still be pretty good. It would be rawer and it would be less censored. But the storytelling and the writing and the acting is of a quality that I think would be right at home on one of the better cable networks.
Look, I assume at some point in the next couple of weeks, you and I will sit down at this very spot and have a very long conversation about the resurrection of network television in the age of HBO, Cinemax, FX, and Netflix. Because we're supposed to be talking about movies. We started this 2 years ago doing movies. I haven't seen a movie in a very long time that has done more for me than Kimmy Schmidt, which we did last week, or American Crime, which we're doing this week, or any number of TV shows that we've talked about over the last couple of months. I'd rather talk about TV. It's certainly the thing that impacts us more honestly and more openly on our day-to-day lives. So
There's still a lot.
By all means, watch
there's still
American
good
Crime.
movies out there. We're in this season where you have to look a little bit harder.
you get to go to South by Southwest. The rest of
Yes.
us watch American Crime.
Precisely.
So next week we're going to talk about another television show, but it's actually a movie.
We're going to talk about Going Clear, the Scientology documentary based on Lawrence Wright's book of the same name, Dallas's own Lawrence Wright. We should probably consult our lawyers before we before we
let's
tape
do
this
that.
segment.
I'm going to jump up on a couch, or I may just jump up on Chris Vognar next week when we talk about Going Clear here on Real Genius.
Please join us.